I was scrolling through cable television about a week ago, something I rarely do nowadays, and to my surprise, The Last Jedi was playing. I think it was on TNT or something, I can't remember. But it feels like the movie just came out yesterday to me for some reason, so it was a little bit surprising. And it had been a while since I've seen The Last Jedi, and I'd been watching The Mandalorian, so I was in a Star Wars mood, if you will. So I decided to give it another watch. Now, The Last Jedi is not good, and many videos have been made explaining why it's not good. And although I usually don't enjoy beating a dead horse, there's an important writing lesson I think can be taken from The Last Jedi that not many people have discussed, and that is what I'm going to be talking about in this video. My idea for this video came as I watched one of the worst scenes of the entire film. It is a scene in which Benicio del Toro betrays Finn and Rose and hands them over to the First Order, and the scene is awful for a number of reasons. At one point, BB-8 takes over an AT-ST and blows up a bunch of stormtroopers. I'm going to try and not get sidetracked, but I don't know what Ryan was thinking with that one. Anyways, I'm going to put all the obvious mistakes aside for a second, because there's one particular line in this scene that I really want to talk about. So, Finn and Rose discover that they've been betrayed by DJ, Benicio del Toro's character, and then Rose says the following.
You lying snake.
You lying snake. I hope some of you know where I'm going at this point. To be a snake is to be deceitful, untrustworthy, treacherous, but these deficiencies come from the snake of Christian mythology. She's basically calling Benicio del Toro a Judas. Now, what story did Rose read that makes her think that snakes are a symbol of deceit? We all know the answer to that question. There is zero justification for the line, and it shouldn't be in the movie. So why is it in the movie? You could chalk it up to lazy writing, I suppose, but I think that tiny piece of dialogue is just a symptom of a much larger problem. And the larger problem is this. Writers in Hollywood believe that the only way the audience can connect with a fictional world is to connect it to our own world. And these connections are almost always frivolous ones. And The Last Jedi is a goldmine of these surface level links, if you want to call them that. The first scene of the movie, for instance, is Poe Dameron making a cellular connection joke. It's a scene that, again, makes no sense in this world, but it was put in because, well, everyone in the audience has cell phones and they've probably joked with their friends about not being able to hear them. Now, if you think about Disney's other big cash cow, Marvel, there are quite a few jokes that have connections to our own culture. I mean, in Endgame, Thor is literally playing Fortnite, which, it's not really my taste, but at least it makes sense, because these characters are either from Earth or live on Earth, so they can make jokes about our culture. The same cannot be said about Star Wars, obviously. So jokes are one way they make a connection, and the other is politics. Rian Johnson carves 15 minutes out of The Last Jedi to make a statement about animal rights and the military-industrial complex, which I suppose are things that could be an issue in this world. But we all know that those scenes were just modern-day political commentary from Disney and Rian Johnson. And what does this do to the viewing experience? Because when you step into a movie theater to see a film like Star Wars, you want to get lost in another world. But symbolism from our world, jokes from our world, and politics from our world, they're all working against that desire. One thing I've heard from Star Wars fans is the sequel films don't feel like Star Wars, and I felt the same way. And I think the absence of that feeling is largely because of the insistence by Disney that our modern world must be smuggled into this fictional one in order for it to be enjoyed. Maybe the most egregious example of this comes in a scene between Rey and Luke, and almost all fans were upset about Luke just tossing his father's lightsaber aside, but I was equally upset about what Luke calls the lightsaber. After he denies Rey's request for help, Luke says this.
I'm gonna walk out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order.
Luke calls it a laser sword to take away the mystique, to take away the aura that the lightsaber has. It's not a weapon of the greatest heroes and villains of this universe. It's just a laser sword. Luke Skywalker is trying to take away the magical aura of a lightsaber. If you showed someone who had never heard of Star Wars before a picture of a lightsaber, they'd probably call it a laser sword, because to people of our world, that's all it is. But not in the Star Wars world. In that world, it is something so much more. Rian Johnson, being the cynic that he is, trivializes the lightsaber through this absurd piece of dialogue. Now, I'm not saying that when you make a whole new world, you have to make multiple cultures and languages like Tolkien did for Lord of the Rings, but if you're going to write a story in a completely different world, do not depend on our own world to support it, because it's just not going to work. And if writing without that dependence is too difficult, then write a story set in our own world. Sci-fi and fantasy isn't for everyone. Think about some of the humor in the Lord of the Rings movies. Pippin and Merry, for instance, were used for comedic relief at times, but their humor was always specific to Middle-earth. Hobbits were known to be pretty laid back compared to the humans and the elves. They didn't get out too much, they liked to eat and drink, so it was funny to see them adapt to the difficulties of life on the road with Aragorn, a ranger. That type of humor makes us feel like we're actually in a different world. Now imagine if Peter Jackson instead thought to himself, I don't think the audience will find this second breakfast line funny. Let's have them make a joke about smelling bad because they haven't been able to shower. That's something people can relate to. If that's how we approach things, Lord of the Rings would not have the legacy it has today. Although these types of cultural connections aren't completely absent from The Mandalorian, I think Jon Favreau is clearly trying to limit them. For instance, at one point, instead of having a character say son of a bitch, they say son of a mud scuffer, which, not my favorite line, but at least he's trying to give this world its own language, because it's vital to making a world feel unique and different. I'm not too optimistic about improvements being made on this front. Many filmmakers are far too cynical to take a fictional world seriously. In Disney, they're patently incapable of refraining from American political connections. So the quality ceiling for Star Wars is somewhat low in my opinion. The Mandalorian is probably as good as I see things getting, although I hope I'm wrong. If you have any thoughts on this topic, please let me know in the comments section. Specifically, if you have any other ideas on why the Star Wars feeling was gone in the sequel trilogy, I'd really like to hear your ideas there. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe on your way out. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I will talk to you soon.